domain. Chapter 26. Martin Eden did not go out to hunt for a job in the morning. It was late afternoon before he came out of his delirium and gazed with aching eyes about the room. Mary, one of the tribe of Silva, 8 years old, keeping watch, raised a screech at sight of his returning consciousness. Maria hurried into the room from the kitchen. She put her work-calloused hand upon his hot forehead and felt his pulse. "You lika to eat?" she asked. He shook his head. Eating was farthest from his desire, and he wondered that he should ever have been hungry in his life. "I'm sick, Maria," he said weakly. "What is it? Do you know?" "Grip," she answered. 2 or 3 days you alla da right. Better you no eat now. Bimeby plenty can eat. Tomorrow can eat maybe." Martin was not used to sickness, and when Maria and her little girl left him, he essayed to get up and dress. By a supreme exertion of will, with rearing brain and eyes that ached so that he could not keep them open, he managed to get out of bed, only to be left stranded by his senses upon the table. Half an hour later he managed to regain the bed, where he was content to lie with closed eyes and analyze his various pains and weaknesses. Maria came in several times to change the cold cloths on his forehead. Otherwise she left him in peace, too wise to vex him with chatter. This moved him to gratitude, and he murmured to himself, "Maria, you get a da milka ranch all right." Then he remembered his long-buried past of yesterday. It seemed like a lifetime since he had received that letter from the Transcontinental, a lifetime since it was all over and done with and a new page turned. He had shot his bolt, and shot it hard, and now he was down on his back. If he hadn't starved himself, he wouldn't have been caught by La Grippe. He had been run down, and he had not had the strength to throw off the germ of disease which had invaded his system. This was what resulted. "What does it profit a man to write a whole library and lose his own life?" he demanded aloud. "This is no place for me. No more literature in mine. Me for the counting-house and ledger, the monthly salary, and the little home with Ruth." 2 days later, having eaten an egg and 2 slices of toast and drunk a cup of tea, he asked for his mail, but found his eyes still hurt too much to permit him to read. "You read for me, Maria," he said. "Never mind the big long letters. Throw them under the table. Read me the small letters." "No can," was the answer. "Teresa, she go to school, she can." So Teresa Silva, aged 9, opened his letters and read them to him. He listened absently to a long dun from the typewriter people, his mind busy with ways and means of finding a job. Suddenly he was shocked back to himself. "We offer you $40 for all serial rights in your story," Teresa slowly spelled out, "provided you allow us to make the alteration suggested." "What magazine is that?" Martin shouted. "Here, give it to me." He could see to read now, and he was aware of the pain of the action. It was the White Mouse that was offering him $40, and the story was The Whirlpool, another of his early horror stories. He read the letter through again and again. The editor told him plainly that he had not handled the idea properly, but that it was the idea that they were buying because it was original. If they could cut the story down 1/3, they would take it and send him $40 on receipt of his answer. He called for pen and ink, and told the editor he could cut the story down 3/3 if he wanted to, and to send the $40 right along. The letter dispatched to the letter box by Teresa, Martin lay back and thought. It wasn't a lie after all. The White Mouse paid on acceptance. There were 3,000 words in The Whirlpool, Cut down a third, there would be 2,000. At $40, that would be 2 cents a word. Pay on acceptance and 2 cents a word. The newspapers had told the truth. And he had thought the White Mouse a third-rater. It was evident that he did not know the magazines. He had deemed the Transcontinental a first-rater, and it paid a cent for 10 words. He had classed the White Mouse as of no account, and it paid 20 times as much as the Transcontinental, and also paid on acceptance. Well, there was one thing certain. When he got well, he would not go out looking for a job. There were more stories in his head as good as the whirlpool, and at $40 apiece he could earn far more than any job or position. Just when he thought the battle lost, it was won. He had proved for his career. The way was clear. Beginning with the White Mouse, he would add magazine after magazine to his growing list of patrons. Hack work could be put aside. For that matter, it had been wasted time, for it had not brought him $1. He would devote himself to work, good work, and he would pour out the best that was in him. He wished Ruth was there to share in his joy, and when he went over the letters lying on his bed, he found one from her. It was sweetly reproachful, wondering what had kept him away for so dreadful a length of time. He reread the letter adoringly, dwelling over her handwriting, loving each stroke of her pen, and in the end kissing her signature. And when he answered, he told her recklessly that he had not been to see her because his best clothes were in pawn. He told her that he had been sick, but was once more nearly well, and that inside 10 days or 2 weeks, as soon as a letter could travel to New York City and return, he would redeem his clothes and be with her. But Ruth did not care to wait 10 days or 2 weeks. Besides, her lover was sick. The next afternoon, accompanied by Arthur, she arrived in the Morse carriage, to the unqualified delight of the Silva tribe, and of all the urchins on the street, and to the consternation of Maria. She boxed the ears of the Silvas who crowded about the visitors on the tiny front porch, and in more than usual atrocious English, tried to apologize for her appearance. Sleeves rolled up from soap-flecked arms, and a wet gunny-sack around her waist, told of the task at which she had been caught. So flustered was she by 2 such grand young people asking for her lodger, that she forgot to invite them to sit down in the little parlor. To enter Martin's room, they passed through the kitchen, warm and moist and steamy from the big washing in progress. Maria, in her excitement, jammed the bedroom and bedroom closet doors together, and for 5 minutes, through the partly open door, clouds of steam, smelling of soap suds and dirt, poured into the sick chamber. Ruth succeeded in veering right and left and right again, and in running the narrow passage between table and bed to Martin's side. But Arthur veered too wide, and fetched up with clatter and bang of pots and pans in the corner, where Martin did his cooking. Arthur did not linger long. Ruth occupied the only chair, and having done his duty, he went outside and stood by the gate, the center of 7 marveling Silvas, who watched him as they would have watched a curiosity in a sideshow. All about the carriage were gathered the children from a dozen blocks, waiting and eager for some tragic and terrible denouement. Carriages were seen on their street only for weddings and funerals. Here was neither marriage nor death, therefore it was something transcending experience and well worth waiting for. Martin had been wild to see Ruth. He was essentially a love nature, and he possessed more than the average man's need for sympathy. He was starving for sympathy, which, with him, meant intelligent understanding. And he had yet to learn that Ruth's sympathy was largely sentimental and tactful, and that it proceeded from gentleness of nature rather than from understanding of the objects of her sympathy. So it was while Martin held her hand and gladly talked, that her love for him prompted her to press his hand in return, and that her eyes were moist and luminous at sight of his helplessness, and of the marks suffering had stamped upon his face. But while he told her of his two acceptances, of his despair when he received the one from the Transcontinental, and of the corresponding delight with which he received the one from the White Mouse, she did not follow him. She heard the words he uttered, and understood their literal import, but she was not with him in his despair and his delight. She could not get out of herself. She was not interested in selling stories to magazines. What was important to her was matrimony. She was not aware of it, however, any more than she was aware that her desire that Martin take a position was the instinctive and preparative impulse of motherhood. She would have blushed had she been told as much in plain, set terms, and next she might have grown indignant and asserted that her sole interest lay in the man she loved, and her desire for him to make the best of himself. So, while Martin poured out his heart to her, elated with the first success his chosen work in the world had received, she paid heed to his bare words only, gazing now and again about the room, shocked by what she saw. For the first time, Ruth gazed upon the sordid face of poverty. Starving lovers had always seemed romantic to her, but she had had no idea how starving lovers lived. She had never dreamed it could be like this. Ever her gaze shifted from the room to him and back again. The steamy smell of dirty clothes, which had entered with her from the kitchen, was sickening. Martin must be soaked with it, Ruth concluded, if that awful woman washed frequently. Such was the contagiousness of degradation. When she looked at Martin, she seemed to see the smirch left upon him by his surroundings. She had never seen him unshaven, and the 3 days' growth of beard on his face was repulsive to her. Not alone did it give him the same dark and murky aspect of the Silva house, inside and out, but it seemed to emphasize that animal-like strength of his which she detested. And here he was, being confirmed in his madness by the two acceptances he took such pride in telling her about. A little longer, and he would have surrendered and gone to work. Now he would continue on in this horrible house, writing and starving for a few more months. "What is that smell?" she asked suddenly. "Some of Maria's washing smells, I imagine," was the answer. "I am growing quite accustomed to them." "No, no, not that. It is something else, a stale, sickish smell." Martin sampled the air before replying. "I can't smell anything else except stale tobacco smoke," he announced. "That's it. It is terrible. Why do you smoke so much, Martin?" "I don't know, except that I smoke more than usual when I am lonely. And then, too, it's such a long-standing habit. I learned when I was only a youngster." "It is not a nice habit, you know," she reproved. "It smells to heaven." "That's the fault of the tobacco. I can afford only the cheapest. But wait until I get that $40 check. I'll use a brand that is not offensive even to the angels. But that wasn't so bad, was it? 2 acceptances in 3 days. That $45 will pay about all my debts." "For 2 years' work?" she queried. "No, for less than a week's work. Please pass me that book over on the far corner of the table, the account book with the gray cover." He opened it and began turning over the pages rapidly. Yes, I was right. 4 days for the ringing of bells, 2 days for the whirlpool. That's $45 for a week's work, $180 a month. That beats any salary I can command. And besides, I'm just beginning. $1,000 a month is not too much to buy for you all I want you to have. A salary of $500 a month would be too small. That $45 is just a starter. Wait till I get my stride, then watch my smoke." Ruth misunderstood his slang and reverted to cigarettes. "You smoke more than enough as it is, and the brand of tobacco will make no difference. It is the smoking itself that is not nice, no matter what the brand may be. You are a chimney, a living volcano, a perambulating smokestack, and you are a perfect disgrace, Martin dear. You know you are." She leaned toward him, entreaty in her eyes, and as he looked at her delicate face and into her pure, limpid eyes, as of old he was struck with his own unworthiness. "I wish you wouldn't smoke any more," she whispered. "Please, for my sake." "All right, I won't," he cried. "I'll do anything you ask, dear love, anything. You know that." A great temptation assailed her. In an insistent way she had caught glimpses of the large, easy-going side of his nature, and she felt sure, if she asked him to cease attempting to write, that he would grant her wish. In the swift instant that elapsed, the words trembled on her lips, but she did not utter them. She was not quite brave enough. She did not quite dare. Instead, she leaned toward him to meet him, and in his arms murmured, "You know, it is really not for my sake, Martin, but for your own. I am sure smoking hurts you, and besides, it is not good to be a slave to anything, to a drug least of all." "I shall always be your slave," he smiled. "In which case I shall begin issuing my commands." She looked at him mischievously, though deep down she was already regretting that she had not preferred her largest request. "I live but to obey, your Majesty." "Well then, my first commandment is, thou shalt not omit to shave every day. Look how you have scratched my cheek." And so it ended in caresses and love-laughter. But she had made one point, and she could not expect to make more than one at a time. She felt a woman's pride in that she had made him stop smoking. Another time she would persuade him to take a position, for had he not said he would do anything she asked? She left his side to explore the room, examining the clothesline of notes overhead, learning the mystery of the tackle used for suspending his wheel under the ceiling, and being saddened by the heap of manuscripts under the table, which represented to her just so much wasted time. The oil stove won her admiration, but on investigating the food shelves she found them empty. "Why, you haven't anything to eat, you poor dear," she said with tender compassion. "You must be starving." "I store my food in Maria's safe and in her pantry," he lied. "It keeps better there. No danger of my starving. Look at that." She had come back to his side, and she saw him double his arm at the elbow, the biceps crawling under his shirt-sleeve and swelling into a knot of muscle, heavy and hard. The sight repelled her. Sentimentally, she disliked it, but her pulse, her blood, every fiber of her, loved it and yearned for it, and, in the old inexplicable way, she leaned toward him, not away from him. And in the moment that followed, when he crushed her in his arms, the brain of her, concerned with the superficial aspects of life, was in revolt, while the heart of her, the woman of her, concerned with life itself, exulted triumphantly. It was in moments like this that she felt to the uttermost the greatness of her love for Martin, for it was almost a swoon of delight to her to see his strong arms about her, holding her tightly, hurting her with the grip of their fervor. At such moments she found justification for her treason to her standards, for her violation of her own high ideals, and, most of all, for her tacit disobedience to her mother and father. They did not want her to marry this man. It shocked them that she should love him. It shocked her, too, sometimes, when she was apart from him, a cool and reasoning creature. With him, she loved him, in truth, at times of vexed and worried love, but love it was, a love that was stronger than she. "This La Grippe is nothing," he was saying. "It hurts a bit, and gives one a nasty headache, but it doesn't compare with break-bone fever." "Have you had that too?" she queried absently, intent on the heaven-sent justification she was finding in his arms. And so, with absent queries, she led him on, till suddenly his words startled her. He had had the fever in a secret colony of 30 lepers on one of the Hawaiian islands. "But why did you go there?" she demanded. Such royal carelessness of body seemed criminal. "Because, I don't know," he answered. "I never dreamed of lepers. When I deserted the schooner and landed on the beach, I headed inland for some place of hiding. For 3 days I lived off guavas, ohia apples, and bananas, all of which grew wild in the jungle. On the 4th day I found the trail, a mere foot trail. It led inward, and it led up. It was the way I wanted to go, and it showed signs of recent travel. At one place it ran along the crest of a ridge that was no more than a knife edge. The trail wasn't 3 feet wide on the crest, and on either side the ridge fell away in precipices hundreds of feet deep. One man, with plenty of ammunition, could have held it against 100,000. It was the only way into the hiding place. 3 hours after I found the trail, I was there, in a little mountain valley, a pocket in the midst of lava peaks. The whole place was terraced for taro patches. Fruit trees grew there, and there were 8 or 10 grass huts. But as soon as I saw the inhabitants, I knew what I'd struck. One sight of them was enough." "What did you do?" Ruth demanded breathlessly, listening, like any Desdemona, appalled and fascinated. "Nothing for me to do. Their leader was a kind old fellow, pretty far gone, but he ruled like a king. He had discovered the little valley and founded the settlement, all of which was against the law. But he had guns, plenty of ammunition, and those Kanakas, trained to the shooting of wild cattle and wild pig, were dead shots. No, there wasn't any running away for Martin Eden. He stayed for 3 months." "But how did you escape?" "I'd have been there yet if it hadn't been for a girl there, a half-Chinese, quarter white, and quarter Hawaiian. She was a beauty, poor thing, and well educated. Her mother, in Honolulu, was worth $1 million or so. Well, this girl got me away at last. Her mother financed the settlement, you see, so the girl wasn't afraid of being punished for letting me go. But she made me swear first never to reveal the hiding place, and I never have. This is the first time I've even mentioned it. The girl had just the first signs of leprosy. The fingers on her right hand were slightly twisted, and there was a small spot on her arm. That was all. I guess she is dead now." "But weren't you frightened? And weren't you glad to get away without catching that dreadful disease?" "Well," he confessed, "I was a bit shivery at first, but I got used to it. I used to feel sorry for that poor girl, though. That made me forget to be afraid. She was such a beauty, in spirit as well as in appearance, and she was only slightly touched, yet she was doomed to lie there, living the life of a primitive savage and rotting slowly away. Leprosy is far more terrible than you can imagine it." "Poor thing," Ruth murmured softly. "It's a wonder she let you get away." "How do you mean?" Martin asked unwittingly. "Because she must have loved you," Ruth said, still softly. "Candidly now, didn't she?" Martin's sunburn had been bleached by his work in the laundry, and by the indoor life he was living, while the hunger and the sickness had made his face even pale, and across this pallor flowed the slow wave of a blush. He was opening his mouth to speak, but Ruth shut him off. "Never mind, don't answer. It's not necessary." She laughed. But it seemed to him there was something metallic in her laughter, and that the light in her eyes was cold. On the spur of the moment it reminded him of a gale he had once experienced in the North Pacific. And for the moment the apparition of the gale rose before his eyes, a gale at night, with a clear sky and under a full moon, the huge seas glinting coldly in the moonlight. Next, he saw the girl in the leper refuge, and remembered that it was for love of him that she had let him go. "She was noble," he said simply. She gave me life." That was all of the incident, but he heard Ruth muffle a dry sob in her throat, and noticed that she turned her face away to gaze out of the window. When she turned it back to him, it was composed, and there was no hint of the gale in her eyes. "I'm such a silly," she said plaintively, "but I can't help it. I do love you, Martin. I do, I do. I shall grow more Catholic in time, but at present I can't help getting jealous of those ghosts of the past, and you know your past is full of ghosts." "It must be." She silenced his protest. "It could not be otherwise. And there's poor Arthur motioning me to come. He's tired waiting. And now, good-bye, dear. There's some kind of a mixture, put up by the druggists, that helps men to stop the use of tobacco," she called back from the door, "and I'm going to send you some." The door closed, but opened again. I do," she whispered to him, and this time she was really gone. Maria, with worshipful eyes that none the less were keen to note the texture of Ruth's garments and the cut of them, a cut unknown that produced an effect mysteriously beautiful, saw her to the carriage. The crowd of disappointed urchins stared till the carriage disappeared from view, then transferred their stare to Maria, who had abruptly become the most important person on the street. But it was one of her progeny who blasted Maria's reputation by announcing that the grand visitors had been for her lodger. After that, Maria dropped back into her old obscurity, and Martin began to notice the respectful manner in which he was regarded by the small fry of the neighborhood. As for Maria, Martin rose in her estimation a full 100%. And had the Portuguese grocer witnessed that afternoon carriage call, he would have allowed Martin an additional $3.85 worth of credit. End of chapter 26.